Hey, Mickey, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tom. How about you?
Great to see you, and thanks for making the time to jump on the call here. As we discussed, we wanted to have a bit of a conversation on how to increase dealer close rates between vendors, OEMs, and their dealers. And this is something that in our business over here that we've been sort of hearing a lot about so far in 2023. You maybe felt the same thing, that heading into this year, almost every company that we spoke to were, if not being told that they were going to have less marketing dollars this year, or their marketing budgets actually got slashed. So for the people in the trenches out there, who needed to sell just as much gear as last year, the question is, well, how do I do that if the marketing budget was slashed? So where we turned to was looking at ways of increasing the close rates between the OEM, the manufacturers, and the dealers, so we could in fact get more with less. So given MXTR and your marketing automation platform and the clients that you have, we know that you have the raw data in terms of what's happening between the OEMs and dealerships, and what's happening specifically around close rates and kind of what's working and not working. So I was hoping to have this brief conversation with you today and just kind of dig into what we see this year, what is working and not working, and really give the folks that are on the webinar today just some tips in terms of the things that they can do to just help squeeze a little more juice out of the lemon, and close some more business and get some more structure around what's going on. So if that sounds
Love it. No, I love it. Let's do it. I mean, I would comment one thing there in the beginning as far as the budgets being slashed and things changing. Yeah. I mean, certainly different in every industry and every group that we work with, but there's some definite economic headwinds out there, right? And I think as every organization kind of approaches it differently, yeah, some budgets are getting slashed, but what is echoing across our client base is the need to really treat every inquiry, every lead, if you will, like gold, and find a way to make sure that those folks are given the opportunity to find their way through that funnel to become a sale. And then also looking at ways to further mine, your database, if you will, or your customer base to drive revenue from existing and past customers really seems to be a focus of folks that we're working with right now.
Right. Good. Well, that's great. So that is all the things that we want to find out. We want to hear from you in terms of what you're seeing and what the data is telling us and all the rest of it. So thanks for that. So really the agenda sort of got these four main points. The kind of overview of close rates in the OEM and dealer-based world today. Maybe you could kind of look inside the machine there and kind of see what's going on, and just give the audience a little bit of a gut feel in terms of what rates kind of look like. That we're always talking about averages at this level, but at least give people just sort of what the benchmarks are, sort of on a high level. Why don't we just dig in and just start right there?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? And they certainly vary by industry and even vary within the industry, if you will, right? So, but I think as a general rule, if we're starting to say, okay, what's a close rate look like? And a close meaning, so often we talk conversion, and everybody thinks, okay, that means leads visiting my website and converting off the website into a lead. We're talking in this case, lead traffic that came to the website, filled out a form, and actually turned into a sale, right? That's the close rate that we're looking for. And we see them vary. We see them vary quite dramatically from 10, 12% upwards to 30%, depending on the industry that we're working with. And often what we see is as we start to work with organizations, those close ratios become stronger, right, over time, because of some of the things that we're doing. And I know we're going to talk about that today. But I'll give you an example within one industry that we work with. We work with 3 different OEMs, manufacturers in that space, and they have 3 very distinct close ratios, right? One of them is closing internet leads and because that's the majority of where they're coming from, right? So we're talking internet-based leads here at about 28%. The other end of the spectrum, they're not even into double digits yet, right? And they're just kind of getting started, if you can believe this, with a lead management process and how to best handle those leads and how to facilitate them across their network. Thus, they don't have a lot of data and they don't have a lot of processes in place.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, that's very, very helpful. And I suppose anyone that sort of was wanted to reach back out, they could contact us, and we could have a more specific conversation about their industry and specifically what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, look, certain industries, lend themselves differently, and the sales cycle is different. So that's why we see the big variation within it. So I think, really having a one-on-one about the specific industries and the nuances of it makes the most sense for sure.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All right. Yeah, when we wanted to sort of dig in also today in terms of processes. So as you know, we've both been around a while, and we know that just the straight implementation of software is never enough to actually make a huge difference. Is that we need to put processes in place. The software or the marketing automation is there to clean up a manual process that's currently in place. And if the manual process is flawed, then throwing software at it isn't going to really fix the issue and the business problem, and isn't going to give us the biggest bang for the buck and the leverage that we're really looking for. So we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about processes and what you're seeing, what really works, with the clients that you have.
Yeah, well, so, kind of, as I mentioned there before, it's interesting as we start to work with an organization who's been at it a while, their close ratios tend to be stronger, right? And those that are new to the sort of the process as a whole, close ratios tend to be a little bit less. And sometimes that's a result of just not having the data to understand it. And other times it's because they don't have a process. And, the process often comes down to, it begins with what happens when that lead comes in. Right. And how do we handle that lead from initial inquiry? And as easy as it might sound, do we have, is that lead getting responded to in a timely fashion? And what does that response look like? And how helpful are we being with helping that customer get to the next step, right? Or to get to somebody at a local level, if that's the next step in the process, right? Are we making that connection? So that there's a routing and a management part of the process. There's a whole segment around lead management in that process, and it becomes critical to have those in play and understand how to route your leads and how to respond to your leads in a very timely manner as the first step in the whole process, right? Right. Yeah, for sure. And then okay. And then we dig into bottlenecks and then some solutions as well. So let me just kind of fire forward here. So, something that we were asked about was, so close rates. So are they industry specific? Are there, what are close rates kind of looking like sort of, industry by industry, or are they geographical? I mean, do deals close faster in Florida than they do in Washington? And seasonality, right? So I'm selling tractors, and now all of a sudden it's October, and is the closing rate different in October than it is in May, when it's like I gotta get this tractor out into the field, like right now. And then also advertising channels. So clients, obviously they're everything's multi-channel, so they're going to be advertising on Facebook and Google Ads and programmatic and all these different channels they can use. And do we see different close rates based on the way that we advertise and stuff like that? 100%. I mean, so we kind of touched on the fact that these close rates are definitely industry specific, right? I mean, they are specific to the organization and vary even within the industry. There's no doubt about it. Geography, that's kind of human nature, I guess, right? I mean, we work with some international clients. We've got some folks up in Western Canada that are coming out of snowfall here, while the east coast of the United States it's been spring for a while, right? So yeah, I mean, geography plays into this as well. But again, I'm not so sure that the close rate necessarily varies. It's more of the process associated with, and it enhances or heightens the need for that great process to be in place, because if your window is shorter, your selling season is shorter, right? You got to make hay when the sun shines, so to speak. So we see some of that. Certainly, I think if you look at certain products, we see some geographical highs and lows as a result of that as well. But again, that's so much industry specific, and same thing with seasonality. I think the advertising channels is an interesting one, because we definitely see a difference on where the leads are coming from, right? We all know in the world of sales, certainly a warm referral and somebody introducing Tom to Billy over here, in terms of, you just bought a tractor X and you're going to thinking about buying that, and you went to the dealership, you're that warm lead, you're going to close at a really high rate, right? But we see leads coming in from certain digital channels to be much further along in the funnel than others, right? And so I know we don't want to make this a talk on digital and what's working and what's not, but I look at some basic things, like we look at Facebook lead ads, for instance, and across our client base, it seems as though leads on that particular platform come in much higher in the funnel. In fact, we've talked a lot that sometimes they're almost outside of the funnel as far as their level of interest. Not to say that they don't end up converting, but there's some work to be involved to get those folks through the funnel, and you better have a strategy in place to be able to get them through the funnel. Versus somebody that's come in through more of an intent-based search, right? And since they've interacted with your brand, and maybe they've entered from PPC, they're a little further down funnel. But I tell you, we see tremendous results, both conversion oriented and ultimately shortening that close time frame through retargeting channels. Retargeting is, obviously they've already interacted with your brand. They've been around, maybe visited once or twice to the site. We're reaching them now with a different message through our retargeting channels, and we're able to bring them back and convert them. We see those conversions converting and turning into sales at a faster rate.
Right. That's wonderful. And within that retargeting, are you then talking about adding channels like email and things once you've got them, once you've got them on the hook a little bit, so to speak?
Well, so 100%, right? I mean, so there's retargeting as a whole, which I think we know, right? Which is a consumer or a lead has visited your website. Maybe they've filled out a form and entered the funnel. Maybe they haven't, but we've got a chance to continue that conversation, wherever they go on the internet, right? That's the basics of retargeting. If we got them to convert on their initial visit or second visit, filled out a form and entered it, then yes, we're putting email in the mix, and we're going to nurture those. We don't consider that retargeting. We consider that nurturing, and we're going to nurture them through their path to purchase. And we might supplement that with retargeting, right, based on where they're at in their funnel. We're big believers, Tom, as you know, in conversational approach to things. So we believe, if a consumer has shown interest in a product and they've entered the funnel at point X, our job is not to keep hitting them with the same old message, but rather to continue that conversation and help them, kind of hold their hand, if you will, through the journey. So if we do that through some retargeting ads, we might do that. But if we can do it through email, which is a tad bit more intimate of a conversation, we would certainly prefer to do that. And cool. And hey, and some industries and some folks prefer text, and we'll throw text in there as well if they're at the right point in that process, and they've opted in to say so.
Yep, great. Yeah, good. I mean, we want to keep the conversation on close rates, but it's good to know if there's any trends given the various channels. Even like marketplaces, are those bringing in leads that are converting well and getting people the leads that they want?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, I'm certainly not an expert to speak to every marketplace, but I will tell you, in some of the industries we work with, there are some, I think, so in the heavy equipment space and some tractor spaces, there are some pretty well-known lead sources out there that definitely send some quality leads to the forefront that convert at a much quicker and higher rate than, say, back to the traditional, Facebook lead, if you will.
Yeah, cool, great, okay. Well, good. So jumping into the bottlenecks and processes, I mean, on the left side, we kind of just earmarked the three main tenets: the improved communication between the vendor and the dealer, standardizing sales processes, aligning goals and strategies. And then we built this kind of dealer revenue generator, this little cheat sheet to kind of think about it in another way, and how we would go about, building a foundational layer, and then building out the funnel and making sure that it's been tested and that it's working properly. So this is actually getting the traffic and getting the dealer engaged. So if there's two sides to it. If I'm the vendor or I'm the dealer, I mean, we've got to be in sync with each other. Or the dealer, they're the ones that are they're in the fire, right? In the firing line, and their salespeople are at the counter, and they're working every day, and they're getting them engaged in a way where the leads are coming through, and that they can actually close the more business, and really being an assistant to the salesperson, I think is gold, and that's the thing that really helps. So getting those nuances sort of ironed out so it works well, and then as being kind of a virtual sales manager to really help the dealer, because they don't always have all of the assets that the OEM vendor would have. So we try and look at it from that approach.
I think it's interesting, right? I mean, I like what you have on the screen there in terms of your phase 2 in the funnel, right? I mean, we all as marketers, especially at the OEM level, we're usually really proficient at building a beautiful website that represents our brand well. We've gotten really good at driving traffic to that website and making sure we're getting lots of impressions, and we've probably optimized our site very well for conversion, right? And so we're kind of measuring the holy grail, and then we get these conversions, and we're happy that we get however many leads or however many form fills come in that given time, whatever it is that you're measuring.
Right. And
it kind of stops there a lot of times, right? We don't know where to go next or what to do with it. And so, there's the idea of everybody that fills out a form is a lead and needs to be handed off to a dealer at a local level. And we can talk about that process and how it sometimes works well and doesn't. But there's also the process of, to your point, of dealer engagement, of there's probably a process of saying, hey, I got 10 leads today, but how do I make sure that these 10 leads are really ready for my dealer? What am I doing to make sure that they're ready to hand off to the dealer? Because if we want an engaged dealer, we need to make sure that what we're giving that dealer has value, right? And so we've all heard it. We've all heard it from the dealers, like, you send me leads that aren't qualified. Yep. We can argue that all day long, whether they are or whether they aren't, right? But perception to a certain degree is reality. And if we've got a system in place, back to those processes, that allows us really to take those 10 leads that come in and run them through a qualifying process of sorts, right? We do it through a mechanism called lead scoring that allows us to really measure each lead, very specifically based on various characteristics. Then when we're handing a lead off to a dealer, we can hand that off with a certain level of confidence that says, hey, this lead is ready for you, Mr. Dealer. And this lead is ready to have a serious conversation at a local level about purchasing the product or moving to the next level, whatever that next milestone might be. That helps drive dealer engagement tremendously as well, rather than flooding their inbox with a whole bunch of leads.
Right. Yeah, cool. So so there's kind of the 9 steps here, and you kind of touched on kind of more of the lead process in that. So let's just blow out this. So each of these 9 steps we drill into and really work through the nuances and make sure that all 9 of these are working properly. But if we took one like the lead process and looked at a kind of a solution, this is like a cheat sheet that we made up just to talk about that side. So like lead routing, I've talked to a lot of clients and they say, yeah, no, we do lead routing. Oh, how do you do that? Well, a lead comes in from the website and then we send an email out to the dealer. Well, that may not be kind of that's a very simplistic way of dealing with lead routing. So why don't I sort of get your take on lead routing as kind of a holistic thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, routing is that, right? The lead comes in and making most times the transaction is not happening at the enterprise level. It needs to get down to a local level to make the purchase or make the transaction, right? So how are we routing that lead to the appropriate dealer? And you're right, Tom. Some people are they get a form fill off the website, they hit forward and they send it on to the dealer X, and I'm done, right? with no accountability or visibility after that. And even that, I would say it's probably not good enough, because the timeliness of that forwarded email is, based on how busy the individual is that received that initial inquiry, right?
Right.
Or if you just came off of a long weekend, maybe it sat there from Friday night till Monday or Tuesday morning till you got to it, and that's certainly too long. Right?
Yeah.
So routing needs to be instant. Routing,
Yes.
and it should be automated. There's no reason in today's world that it can't be. So
Right.
and it can be routed based on any number of factors. It can be routed based on zip codes, right? So a lead comes in, and based on where Tom zip code that you put it on your form, I'm going to route you to the dealer in that area and make that introduction, and that lead then has been routed, and we call it handed off to the appropriate dealer if it's time to do that. And the notifications have gone to that lead and to the dealer as a form of introduction, a formal handshake, if you will, or handoff of that particular lead. But routing can get deeper than that, right? You can automate this. You can do, technology allows us to do routing based on round robin. So if you've got 3 stores in one area and you want to send it just simple ABC, 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 that's fine. If you want to go, your tiered dealers get X and your next level gets the next 2, you can do that. And if you have product specific situations within those stores, you can set up rules to do that. So, just keep using you, Tom, as an example. You're the specialist for this particular line of tractor. I'm going to give that to you, where Billy over here should handle all the service inquiries. Well, okay, great. He's going to go over there. It's really, limitless. As long as the data points are there, those leads can be routed in real time, anywhere in your organization at any level. And notifications as such can go to the end user, the person actually getting the lead, and then anybody up the food chain could get notified of, hey,
nice,
so-and-so just got a lead.
Yeah, and those could escalate if nothing's been done until somebody accepts the lead and stuff like that.
So another great question, right? Because oftentimes we know as salespeople, you mentioned it in the beginning, each of these dealerships usually is pretty darn busy, and the guys could be out in the field. They could be, showing that we're talking tractors. They could be, test driving a machine, right? With a client or delivering one for that matter. And so, sometimes they get busy and they don't respond as promptly as we would like. So we could put rules in place within the routing engine that would allow us to essentially knock on the shoulder of that sales guy a second time to make sure, that he or she got that lead and they're going to take ownership of it. Or we can literally put a time frame in it that automatically reassigns it if it's not accepted in a given period of time. So I could send a lead to Tom, and if the rules are, hey, if Tom doesn't action this lead within, you pick it, an hour, 24 hours, whatever you want it to be, boom, it automatically gets assigned to the next salesperson at that location. So, that's routing, and it goes a lot further than just simply forwarding an email. Or for that matter, handing somebody if you're in the same dealership, handing somebody a piece of paper that says, here, go call this lead. Yeah, we got to do better than that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I know I've seen some stats anywhere from sort of 10 to 30% increase when lead routing, automated, sophisticated, proper lead routing is put in place. That maybe 10 to 30% increase in close rates.
Yeah.
And what about, I'll add to that, what about speed too? I know I've seen some numbers where it talks about the speed in terms of like 5 minutes or 10 minutes getting back. If a rep gets back to that lead like really fast, the close rate goes like right through the roof.
Yeah. It varies by industry, but it can be significant. And I've seen numbers as high as 10 times instantly just because of the instant response. And I think that goes to the point of, waiting to Monday morning to respond to a Friday night lead is not good enough anymore, right? That doesn't work. And most people aren't doing that. They've got simple autoresponders at a minimal that are set up. But he who reaches out first is most likely to own that relationship, right? And stands a better chance of turning that lead into an actual sale. So we're big believers in that lead routing, and then automating what we like to call a little welcome sequence through what is up next is the lead nurturing side of things. So even if it is Friday night at 8 o'clock, there's still some communication going on that particular lead, right? And so we're big believers in putting that in play as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because people go on holidays and they get sick and they move on and all of these things. So having this automated sequence around routing, and then it's its kid sister there, the nurturing is just is magic. It just pays off huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and the nurturing, we get a lot of questions around that. Well, how do you nurture? And first of all, I guess, for the sake of discussion, right? Nurturing is basically, again, a conversation that is going on with the lead via email or via text in most cases. That is just continuing that conversation, right, with the consumer. And so, sometimes we get questions about, well, how does that impact things if my salesman does respond right away or picks up the phone and calls or whatever the case is. But we build these nurturing sequences in such a way that they're conversational enough and general enough that they're not going to be intrusive to the normal conversation that the salesperson would have with that lead, right? So, if the salesperson happened to talk to, that particular lead, and they get off the phone and 5 minutes later an email comes out about how great the dealership is and why they're the obvious choice, it's not going to seem like a disconnect to them based on that conversation, because we're not trying to have salesman specific conversations. We're trying to have a little more general conversation in the beginning with them.
Sure, good. And lead nurturing also, say maybe post sale. So I made the final purchase on my tractor, but there's warranties that can be sold, and there's kits and there's add-ons and all that kind of stuff. Lead nurturing be used there.
Definitely. I mean, in the beginning we were talking about that existing database side of things is another focus, right, for businesses today as they battle these economic headwinds, and lead nurturing post sale is huge. And right. Some of the industries we've been talking about today, what we know is that oftentimes, the most money is made not on the initial sale, but it's made in the aftermarket, right? It's made on service, right. It's made on parts, right. It's made on all these different things. And again, we have the ability to own that conversation and own that relationship with these folks, and we can nurture them to whatever that next item might be, right? And so nurturing definitely puts us in a great position to be able to continue those conversations in a very conversational and systematic manner. So we don't have to worry about, is everybody getting talked to about X, Y, or Z? And it just happens automatically based on where they're at and what their past purchase was and the data that we have in our system.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah. So I want to wrap up in the next sort of 5-6 minutes or so, but analytics is a big one. If we kind of tackle that from the perspective, maybe the territory manager, and it's a hard job keeping track of all your dealers, and you sent them leads and they're going, I don't know, that lead was garbage, and you never send me any good leads, and just all, that whole thing, right? It gets so tiresome, it's exhausting. And, how can proper analytics, when a system, a software-based marketing automation is put in by the vendor, how can that sort of help the territory manager really just have a much better conversation with his or her dealers?
Yeah, so when you're using a technology to manage your leads, right, and to route your leads and ultimately to nurture those leads through to sale, it brings accountability and visibility to the whole process, right? There's a whole bunch of data in the system that you can see. And the nice thing is that when you use that technology, you can set up permissions within your organization for your TMs, your regional managers, your executive team to have access to this data based on what's important to them. So your TMs are going to see all the dealers that they manage. Your district folks are going to see everything within there, and all that data kind of rolls up, right? So now, as the territory manager, when you go in to meet with your dealer on a monthly basis or whatever your cadence is for stopping by and seeing that particular dealer, the conversation can take a slightly different turn, right? Typically sometimes, I shouldn't say typically, sometimes those conversations can be a little bit one-sided and be a little bit like, what have you done for me lately? And if they're multi-line guys, my other guys are sending me leads and you guys aren't sending me anything, and blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, now all of a sudden the TM can say, well, actually, we sent you 10 leads last month based on what I see here in the system. So my question for you is, how are you making out with those leads?
Right.
And the system puts you in a position to see a whole lot of data associated with what those leads have been doing. So, if the dealer's saying, well, these leads aren't good, or they're tire kickers or whatever it is, you've got some ammunition to say otherwise. Plus, as the TM, you can see what all the other dealers in your market have been doing with the leads you're sending to them. So, you start to be able to say, hey, Mr. Dealer, I hear you. You're closing 1 out of 10 of these things. I have to question what's going on here with the leads that are coming to you, because my other dealers are closing 3 out of 10 for the sake of discussion, right?
Yeah. And that may be that the dealer thinks he's doing well and is doing the best intentions, but having that kind of data from a territory perspective could really help be an eye opener. Hey, I got to fix some things here.
It allows the conversation to happen, right?
Yeah.
That's really the main thing. And again, it's not to point the finger at this or make this adversarial, but it allows the conversation to happen. And oftentimes there's learnings to be had, right? Like we've seen organizations take this data and have training sessions off of it, how best to close leads and how, those kind of things can happen accordingly. So it just becomes interesting because you now have data, you now have visibility, and you can help, grow that process. All this has to do with routing leads, nurturing leads, and ultimately closing leads, right? I mean, the one thing that we all know, and every marketing stat will tell you, no matter how great all this process is, we know from the very beginning of this whole thing that half of the leads that come to your website and show interest in your product are not ready to buy today, right? Even if everything is going right, we know that to be true. So the question starts to become, what are we doing as an organization to get a bigger piece of that 50% that aren't ready to buy, right? What are we doing to help, carve out more of that and get our fair share of wallet from that 50%? These are the types of programs that can help you grow that, significantly as you're looking at your overall process.
Great. Okay. Well, that was a terrific way to sort of sum things up. And thanks for coming on here. I mean, I think the clients that I've brought into MXTR have been super happy, both from a software side, but more importantly from a human interaction side, and how the expertise that you and your team have really helped them just do a better job of relating with their dealers and getting, developing the relationship at a deeper level and just in closing more business. So I would certainly urge, anybody who's watching this today, you can reach out directly to Mickey. His email is there, or myself. What we do is more on the strategy and the digital advertising side. So we like to feed the funnel, feed the beast. And then MXTR takes it over and does the lead nurturing and does the closing and helps dealers do it from that perspective. So it's a terrific kind of all-in-one win-win.
Tom, I appreciate the kind words and certainly appreciate you feeding the beast for sure. You do a fine job with that. But I do think it's worth noting, and we probably should have mentioned this early on when we were talking solution-wise. A lot of times the questions come up in terms of this all sounds great, but how the heck am I going to do all of this stuff? And that is, we bring the tech to the table, at MXTR. As Tom said, we have a team that does the work associated with this. So when we're talking about the nurturing and setting up the rules associated with the routing of the leads and all the things that need to be done to make this thing go, all the way down to training and launching with your individual dealers, our team does that, right? So this is not something that you've got to go hire, a whole team to be able to implement. We're going to be that team for you. You just need to raise your hand to say, this is important to me. We need to do a better job at managing our leads so we can drive more revenue, because that's really what this is about. And then our team will step in and help you with that process.
Yep, it's a true done for you service.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Great. Okay. Great. Well, hey, thanks for making the time in your busy day today, and we'll be in touch soon. And all I can say is hit them long and straight from here.
You haven't seen my game lately, Tom.
I hear you.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Mickey.
See ya.